streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Tonight, we will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
Muito boa noite, bom dia, boa tarde. Você já está assistindo isso aqui gravado. Eu sou a Mariana, prazer, estou aqui com o Marcelo, uma convidada especial. E você está no Esporte 101. Se você quer saber um pouquinho do que acontece nos bastidores do esporte eletrônico, ou você quer entrar nessa incrível carreira que é trabalhar com games e esportes, você está no lugar certo. O Esporte 101 é o seu podcast para aprender o que acontece por trás das cortinas, por trás dos telões dos eventos de esportes e tudo que acontece nesse mundo. E eu tô aqui hoje com uma convidada mais que especial, uma outra convidada gringa, então prepara o inglês de vocês. Que hoje eu tô com a Melissa Burns. Ela é founder e CEO do Esports Canada, uma das principais leads da construção do esporte lá no Canadá. E ela vem atuando diretamente na estruturação da federação, conectando o governo, indústria e comunidade para posicionar o Canadá no cenário global. So, welcome, Melissa. It's amazing to have you here with us. So, please be welcomed.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Uh, Melissa, our first question is we did like some welcome and some introducing about
Yeah.
yourself, but better than us, you usually ask for you introduce yourself. Who is Melissa? Where does she lives? Like how do you start in esports and everything?
Well, my name is Melissa Burns. I am from Canada, and I have to start by saying that I am a settler on Treaty 1 territory in Turtle Island. So this is the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, Niniwak, Dakota, Dene, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. And it's really important to the work that we do at Esport Canada to ensure that we are always grounded in our commitment to reconciliation. And so that's something that I take very seriously in all the work that I do. And in terms of esports, I've been a gamer my whole life. I grew up playing games. I love gaming. I've never been particularly good at gaming, if I'm being completely honest. So by no means am I the pro in this space. But I am passionate about the space and I saw the potential and opportunity of it. So I actually got my start in the education space, is how I found my way into the esports world beyond just playing casually myself. And long story short, ended up founding Esport Canada and excited to continue doing that work in collaboration with all kinds of folks from across the country.
Wow, so you were a gamer since you're a child. Me too.
Amazing.
What's your favorite game?
For esports, definitely League of Legends. I'm a mid laner, always love playing mid lane. If I can get into a group, I usually end up duoing bot lane as a support, but if I get the choice, I'll always play mid.
Nice. Me too. I'm a League of Legends fan as well. So, you since you're a child, you are a gamer. But when did you realize you can work with this? You said like you never want to be a pro or follow this path, but what's the start, the spark of you? Okay, I can have this as a career.
Well, and the interesting thing about it is that it still isn't my full-time day job.
Oh,
I do this all off the side of my desk in a pro bono capacity. And I have worked in a number of different fields over the years. So where it really started for me was I was switching from one career into switching into education. And I wanted to find something that would help me feel a little bit more grounded throughout that transition. And this was back in 2016. And at the time, I went to my new principal at the school where I was about to start teaching, and I asked if I could start an esports program because I knew that they had like, your traditional like basketball team and volleyball team and all those different kinds of clubs and activities for students. They didn't have a gaming program or esports. And so I asked if I could start it. And the principal said, well, if you can find the gear, go for it. And so I found at the time, oh, what were we playing on? I think it was the Nintendo Wii U, and I found the kit. I got it started. We did Super Smash Bros to get us started, and that was kind of the start of it, because what I saw in that moment was not only did I have a new way of engaging with my students that was really meaningful and connected to them in a very personal way, it was also validating of their experiences, their passions, their skill sets in a different way that is usually ignored in a school setting. It's really common in Canada where teachers will ask their students at the beginning of the day, like, what did you do last night? Or what did you do on the weekend? And then they qualify it by saying, other than play games, other than play video games. And I wanted to take that and flip the script on it and use that as an opportunity, as a starting point for conversation by saying what you care about, what you're passionate about, what you're good at is valid in an educational setting. And it does bring a lot of value to this space and can be leveraged in an educational way. And so that kind of started things for me. And then I was able to find some other teachers who understood what I was trying to accomplish, worked with them, and we were able to establish a provincial school esports association, so the Manitoba School Esport Association. And from there, we were able to develop tournament structures and leagues and all kinds of things for students in schools across the province to be able to engage and develop in very structured and safe environments that were designed specifically to engage the students in skill development that would be transferable outside of just a school setting and outside of a game setting, so that they could develop their soft skills and their interpersonal skills and their self-regulation skills and all those different aspects that we want to learn in all of our education now through gaming in a different way. And we were able to really find a great foundation for that work. But then we realized that this isn't actually limited geographically the way physical sport is. So why are we just doing this provincially? Let's look at expanding this to a national org. And so in January of 2020, we launched Esport Canada as a nation-based program that was specifically for education. And the timing could not have been better, because then the pandemic hits, schools are going to their homes, and teachers have no way of connecting with their students except through digital platforms. And all of a sudden, esports becomes the only thing that they can actually do to engage their students outside of a class environment, outside of their actual schoolwork. And so we saw massive growth throughout the pandemic as schools really were able to leverage this for community growth, connection, student well-being, and they were able to try it in a way that felt very safe. And that really gave us some legs that got us going, but it also got us some attention. And so then in late Q4, I would say, of 2021, we were approached by folks from the esports industry, as well as some of the destinations in Canada, who wanted to see esports nation-based competition established in Canada. And they're like, you're already federally registered as a not-for-profit. Would you, and you have the name Esport Canada, would you expand your operations to beyond just the classroom, but to include nation-based competition as well? And so at that point, we had kind of stalled out in our growth because there were some folks who didn't really understand the purpose of what we were doing now that we were starting to return back to the classroom, and didn't really understand the value of it. And we wanted to give them a really clear path forward where they could see, like, this is what your students are doing here in the classroom, but they also can now have the opportunity to compete for our nation in international competition and travel for this, and all these different kinds of opportunities that open up for that, and all the different aspects that support that ecosystem too. And so we took the leap, and in 2022, we relaunched the organization with 3 major divisions of support. So we had our education division, which is our pre-existing school-based programs in schools across the country. So not just school-age kids, but in-school programming. Our post-secondary division that looked at all the colleges and universities in the country, that was heavily spearheaded by St. Clair College, Fanshawe College, and Keano College. And then we had our newly formed competitive national council that really focused on developing those pipelines for nation-based competition. And that's kind of how we ended up where we are now. And we've done a lot since then, but that's our foundation.
Wow,
Wow.
I'm really shocked because it's amazing how amazing is it's everything happened so natural from the community. The community built the federation, the Sports Canada. It's so amazing. Congratulations for
Yes.
your work.
Uh, Andy, did you remember the first project you did in Sport Canada?
The first project,
Yeah,
like within schools.
wherever you want to say, like the first project with schools or with a professional team,
You
whatever.
have an interesting story.
So the first project we did was just a Super Smash Bros. Tournament for kids grades 6 to 12, and it was really fantastic. After our expansion into nation-based competition and a relaunch in 2022, our first major competition at that point was the International Esport Federation, their World Esport Championships in Bali in 2022. So that was really exciting to then see not only were we able to implement this in schools, but we were now able to support a Tekken athlete in competing at the ISF championships. So that was a really cool experience.
So
Uh,
you start to the Sports Canada in January 2020, right? And since then, you have been the CEO, the president, I can say like that. So, what was the biggest challenging as the president, as the CEO of the federation, and also being a woman in the such important position, the leading role?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting position to be in, and we've gone through a lot of stages of growth. When we were getting started, we honestly, I had no intention of it being anything as big as it has become. So it's been kind of exciting to see the community buy-in, because that's something that has been really important to me, is making sure that whenever we are trying to grow or do something new, we want to make sure that we're doing it with the community. And so even when we were getting ready for our application to be the national team partner for ENC, uh, we hosted an open community call, because we knew that we have a community of folks who have worked with us in the past for many years now, but there might be others who are just seeing us for the first time because of ENC, and we want them to be at the table too. We want them to be part of it. So that's been really foundational to the work and the way that we've tried to grow this organization. But something that I would say, two things are really fundamental to the approach in how we've been trying to develop this particular organization. One is that we have been trying to model ourselves after the other NSOs, the national sport organizations in the country. So we've done all the work to do our research and develop our bylaws, our policies, our governance structures to
Mhm.
parallel that of the national sport organizations in our country. So just like we have Hockey Canada and Canada Soccer and all of those organizations that are supporting Canadians in those disciplines, we wanted to make sure that our governance and operational structures was parallel to that, which meant that we were actually going to be holding ourselves to a pretty high standard. We are completely unfunded. We're 100% volunteer run. So everybody who works with us is doing so in a voluntary capacity. And we have gone out of our way to make sure that we are following the Canadian Sport Governance Code and that we have everything aligned. So even with our policies, something that is required of national sport organizations in Canada is you have to have a concussion policy. Now, your odds of getting a concussion while playing a video game are pretty small. All that to say, we do still have to have a concussion policy that's required for national sport organizations. So we do actually have a concussion policy. So if you happen to rage quit or get hit with the remote or something, we have a concussion policy that will get you to monitor your screen time as you re-enter after you've been cleared by the doctors and everything. So that's been something that we've been really careful to prioritize as we've developed, is making sure that not only are we following what is required, from our nation in terms of sport governance, but also doing so in connection without losing the authenticity to esports at the same time. So it's not just adopting blindly all of these different policies, but looking and critically considering how do they actually work within an esports setting? How do we adapt them? How do we add to them to make them fit and make sense within a sports setting? So it's never just blindly taking things. We always want to make sure it still makes sense to esports. The other part of it is that we want to make sure that as a national sport organization, we have a twofold manifest. So we're looking at, or mandate, sorry. So our mandate is twofold in that on one side, we're looking at creating safe and structured pathways for player development. That's where our education programs come into play. That's where our post-secondary career exploration and development comes into play. And then we also want to be supporting our national teams. And so that's something that we're now starting to dig into a little bit more earnestly with FIFA E and the ENC. We had a really great start in that sort of grassroots pipeline space, and now we're starting to develop more robustly our national team spaces. So that's kind of what our priorities have been.
Now, if I understand, you work as a pro bono in Esports Canada, and you have your work, which is business development manager of sports and special events, right? Can you tell
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about the difference with work with esports and I would say like a general sports? How is the main difference for you?
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just going to plug in my computer here.
Don't worry, like
Don't worry.
There we go. So yeah, so with my day job, my role is working for the city of Winnipeg, Winnipeg Economic Development and Tourism, and my job is to bring events to my city. And it just so happens that I work within the field of sports and special events specifically. So there's a lot of really natural crossover in that position. So I'm still new to the role. I just started last July, and it was actually because of my work in esports that I made the transition. Because previously I had been working in the field of education, as I mentioned. I was the arts and technology coordinator for a school district in my city, and I needed to have the flexibility to travel more than just July and August on summer break for the students. And so I looked for a new job that would allow me the flexibility to work remotely from time to time. And this one felt like a good fit. And it also naturally led into a lot of the conversations and context that I was developing through esports anyway. So what I get to do with my day job is I'm interfacing with all of the national sport organizations every single day now, looking at what events they have coming up and which ones might be a good fit for my city and bringing them into the city. But that also means that I get to have this really natural dialogue with all the national sport organizations to explore what works, what doesn't work, what can I learn from those spaces and from those different organizations that I can then take back into esports as well, which has been really significant, particularly around our sustainability development plans. As I mentioned, we're obviously working in a pro bono capacity right now, but we want to be able to transition this with intentional business plans. And for that to happen, we need to make sure that we're not only just putting together feasibility studies, but we want to look at the longevity of our business plan and how to make sure it's as sustainable as possible. So getting to work with all of these national sport organizations allows me to see and learn from them what works in our country and what doesn't, because even interfacing with the other esports federations country to country across the globe, our domestic landscape is so different that it often doesn't translate well. And so what works in one country sometimes doesn't work one for one in your own country because of different taxes or legislation or all different kinds of sport policy that might be in the place that make some things work and some things don't. And so really your best bet is to learn from the people who are doing it in your own country. And so I'm really fortunate that I get to have that opportunity with my day job as well. Within reason, of course. I'm not just sitting there asking them about how do I make this apply to esports. It's more listening and going, oh yeah, file that away for the next time, you know?
I think my honest question for you now is like your day has more than 24 hours. I think it's amazing. I'm an entrepreneur in esports. I have a event producer in esports. I have this project with Marcelo, and I have a lot of initiatives here. And Brazil is facing I think, the most challenging moment for esports because we have two main activities happening in Brazil. First, we have the bets, the gaming sector become the most I don't know, profitable moments here in Brazil. We have a lot of laws and projects coming up, and also we had a law, especially for children, to limit their access to some games. We have a lot loot boxes as League of Legends. It's restricted in Brazil for just people with 18 years old or older. So it's a lot of challenging happening in Brazil. And my question for you is in this way, what are the most challenges you are facing now in Canada? I did the same question to the Norwegian girl we have here, and it was shocked because we are living two different moments for esports in our countries, and I have this curiosity for Canada. You are is the CEO for 6 years, and my question is, what are the most main accomplishments you have observed, and also what are the current challenges in Canada for esports?
You know what? I think they're wrapped up in the same thing. I think what I would count as some of our greatest accomplishments are still some of our greatest struggles at the moment. And it really comes down to federal recognition of esports. So, right now within Canada, esports is kind of stuck in this weird paradox where we aren't able to get federally recognized because Sport Canada doesn't actually recognize sports. They will fund sports, but they don't say, like, this is a sport, this is not a sport, those kinds of things. But they do, because there is funding tied to it that specifically goes towards offsetting the cost of safe sport, which is our structure for providing safe and equitable access and reporting to keep sports environments as safe as possible for participants, and reporting mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. That funding is for safe sport from Sport Canada. And right now, esports is explicitly listed as ineligible for that funding. So that makes it really challenging because the only way for us to potentially access that, even though it's listed as ineligible for funding, is if we were to be recognized by the Canadian Olympic Committee. And the Canadian Olympic Committee will only recognize us if esports is an Olympic sport, which it is now. So that's exciting. But they say that is one aspect of it. But you now also have this list of compliance you have to make, which we have. We've met all of those requirements, but you have to be the official signatory to Safe Sport. You go to Safe Sport, and Safe Sport says you can only be a signatory to Safe Sport if you are receiving funding from Sport Canada for this. So we're stuck in this feedback loop where we need someone to say yes first to break into the system. But at the same time, we've gone out of our way to ensure that we are fully compliant with all of the policies, all the regulations, all the governance structures that are required of sport in our country. We even implement safe sport without being an official signatory. We still have all those structures in place to keep the space as legitimate as possible. And so that's something that we very much pride ourselves on. It's been a lot of work to do that, but we're very, very proud of the work that we have accomplished to hold ourselves to such a high standard. And because of that work, we've also now been able to leverage that governance excellence to work with other Canadian partners and franchises and clubs to now get the recognition from ENC. And that was a really, really significant step for us, both with FIFA E and with the ENC, to be able to participate and represent Canada in those spaces, because now we're in a position where esports industry is starting to pay attention, and they're starting to sit up and listen and go, yes, we'll work with you on this, because it's never about us versus them or anything like that. We want to work collectively towards a common goal. And so we're now doing that in these spaces, but these spaces are also elevated. And so it's starting to get the attention of people from Sport Canada. It's getting the attention of people in the Ministry of Sport. It's getting the attention of the Canadian Olympic Committee. And so now all of a sudden we have the opportunity to have conversations with these people who have the ability to change that feedback loop, who maybe weren't ready to listen before. Now we're in a position where we can start to have those conversations and look at what do we need to move on to the next step of this, because we want to legitimize this. And it's not because of any one particular person or organization. At the end of the day, we want to look at this as an opportunity to engage Canadians, right? Because at the developmental level of it, when we're looking at those pathways of player development, we're looking at an activity that over 90% of Canadian youth are engaging with esports and gaming every single day. That is an incredible statistic to consider. And when we're looking at something like that and recognizing that without a national sport organization, there are no safeguards, there are no rails to keep these kids safe, we're now introducing a structure for them that allows them to participate, allows them to continue doing the thing that they want to do and they love to do and they're passionate and skilled at, but do it in a way that's safe and structured and intentionally shifts the conversation from passive consumption of games to intentional development through games. So one of the comparisons I like to make is to that of basketball. When you think of like basketball in the 1980s in North America, anyway, I don't know if this translates to other parts of the world, but in North America, basketball was kind of something that wasn't really taken seriously. You know, you had people playing pickup ball in the streets, and, you know, it was sort of this maybe associated with like delinquent behavior at times. And then all of a sudden they brought it into the schools and they made it part of the phys ed curriculum, the physical education curriculum. And they started teaching kids through basketball, and it completely changed the sport. And you see like the impact of the NBA and structured sport, where not only are you seeing the elite level, because right now we see the elite level, we see elite esports, but we don't necessarily have those developmental structures the same way. And so what we want to do is create those pathways that then allow them to leverage it in really impactful ways, because not every kid in Canada who plays hockey, like lots of kids in Canada play hockey, not every kid who plays hockey in Canada wants to be in the NHL. They're there because they love the sport, they love to be with their friends, they love to have those experiences, and they develop all kinds of incredible skills that help them regulate themselves, that help them work in team settings, that develop their sportsmanship, that develop all of these transferable skills that we can also provide through esports as well. And so that's what I'm really excited about and what I'm hoping will come out of these next steps.
Nice. And you talk a little bit about the how to develop, how to include people. In Esports Canada, now you are currently working talent development, educational programs. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, so we have our school-based programs. So the way that we're structured, just like other national sport organizations, key difference, I'll explain it in a second, but is that we have provincial and territorial sport organizations who are our members, and they run programs locally. And then that feeds into regional and national programs that we run at the national level. And then, of course, we also have our national team programs that are sort of our high performance program space. And that's our newer segment, the piece that we're starting to develop more in earnest now because of ENC and FIFA E. So still lots of growing pains in that space. But the one key difference between how we are running esports as a national sport organization, as opposed to like volleyball, as an example, is that when you play in Volleyball Canada leagues and stuff like that, it's all club based. So it's outside of school. So even though it is school aged kids, there are spaces after school on weekends and stuff like that where they get to actually engage. For us, because we were able to found the organization with Canadian teachers, our development programs are actually in schools. And so these kids get to be part of that in the like outside of the classroom time. Some of them do actually do it as part of their classroom time, but for the most part, it's just like you would try out for your school's basketball team. You can try out for your school's Rocket League team and all of those kinds of opportunities. And so that's all tied to different career development, program development. So even students that aren't necessarily directly attached to playing can still have opportunities to develop their skills and passions in the space. So there are lots of students that work on developing their casting or their hosting and analysis and production and streaming and asset creation and development and marketing and comms and data analytics and all kinds of different things. And so we've created all of these sort of microcosms of the professional esports world within our school programs so that students get that sort of first like in their that sort of hands-on first grasp at what this could actually be. And these are skills that they can then use in any sort of work environment as well. So it's very easy to transfer.
Anna, I will have the question. I think is the milestone for Canada is the you are being selected as Canada national team partner for the Sports Nation Cup for this year in Saudi Arabia. So I can talk up to you like that. What was the reaction and the receive this new? I think it's will be a big moment for all of us in sports. So how did you react and how is the preparation for the ENC?
It's been so incredible. It was a very exciting experience to receive that news. It was something we worked very hard towards, but it certainly wasn't done alone. Like honestly, if we had applied just by ourselves as Esport Canada, we wouldn't have got it, and we know that. We're very humble with the fact that we would not have been in a position to do it, and that was never something that we intended to do or set out to do in the first place. We wanted to do it in partnership, and so we were in a really fortunate position to have Overactive Media join us and partner with us as our primary franchise partner. Them bringing their level of expertise, their knowledge, their even just boots on the ground experience, having been there as one of the club teams for Esports World Cup for the past 2 years, has been absolutely invaluable. And we couldn't have done it without them. And then beyond that, it was really a full community approach. We, like I mentioned, we had opened it up as an open community call so that we could answer the questions that our existing community had, but then also open the door for conversation with folks who were new to us, who we hadn't been on their radar before. And so everyone was able to then contribute and be part of it. And so it was hard fought and won collectively. And so it's something that we're very excited to be able to continue. So, working with the folks at Incendium and Gallant Gaming and there's just too many different programs and clubs across the country to even name them all. But it's been really incredible to see the community come together for something like this And of course, like I said, there are growing pains. We're figuring things out as we go. But something that we have always done and will continue to do is take feedback very seriously. So even as we go through the process of putting together our teams and putting together all of our resources and everything else, we're taking notes on like, oh, we should definitely do this differently next year. And, figuring those things out as we go and being open and honest with folks about that process and asking for the feedback. It's being unafraid of the feedback so that we can make it better for future iterations.
And how the selection process will work?
So selection process is determined by the ENC. So that part is like they've already kind of established it. But what we're doing that's a little bit different is even though that the ENC has set out that the national team manager directly selects all of the coaches based off of merit, and then the coaches are going to select all of the players, again, based off of merit. What we are doing in addition to that doesn't impact the decisions that are made, but allows us to once again continue that conversation with or government, with the Canadian Olympic Committee, with Sport Canada, is then making sure that everything is really well documented. So making sure that conflict of interest documents are signed and formally filed so that we have that on record. Making sure that we have pre-established rubrics for evaluation. So yes, we are looking at evaluating the best candidates based on merit, but what does that actually mean? What are the standards? What are the categories? What are the criteria that are being assessed? And making sure that that rubric is pre-established before any of the considerations are even made, so that then there is an even playing field, so that when the scouting happens and we're starting to look at it, and our manager has that tool at the ready to be able to then evaluate based off of here's what we're actually looking for. This is what top tier means for Esport Canada, given the criteria that has been provided by ENC, and then going into interview process with that same sort of mindset of let's pre-establish what those questions are. What characteristics are we looking for? What are we listening for? What are we trying to get from these interviews so that we have the best possible assessment of this coach's approach to their role on a team and how they might successfully support a team at the ENC and represent Canada well. All of that needs to be predetermined, established, so that then all of the records can be kept. And so then it's looking at making sure that everything's being filled out, that it's being filed, that then, afterwards we have committees that can review and make sure that we're checking for, was there any conflict of interest that may have impacted any of the decisions that were made? Were there any questions that we want to tweak for the future because we found this worked really well, but this one didn't, or we were trying to get to this kind of response, but the way that it's framed didn't quite get us there, and being really critical of what we are actually trying to accomplish so that then in future years, we can bring that as evidence to the Canadian Olympic Committee and to Sport Canada. Here is our governance that aligns with what you require of national sport organizations. So even though ENC says, like, this is what it's going to be, and that is how it is, we're also on the back end still collecting the data to demonstrate good governance. And that's really important.
Nice. I would like to talk a little bit more about the esports, about competition and everything. But we have a question for a public that they are watching. Giovanna, I think, is thirsted. She asked how the community reacts about your project in the first beginning. They accepted really well, or it was like more a slowly process? I think she is talking about the Esports Canada. How was that?
About Esport Canada or about going into ENC?
I think you can talk about both. I think she asked
Okay,
about
sure.
the Sport Canada because it was like a little bit before, but you can talk about
Yeah.
both.
Sure. So for Esport Canada, I think that makes the most sense anyway. So for Esport Canada, honestly, it took a while to get buy-in. Like, if I'm being completely frank, because we had started in the education space, we were not focused on elite or high performance. We were not focused. That wasn't why we had started the organization in the first place. And so we were really genuinely just trying to build those safe structures for students to engage. We wanted to create impact, and we wanted to create a different space for the next generation. So that, like, I shared earlier that like I've been a gamer my whole life, but I still to this day struggle to own my identity as a gamer. And gaming spaces are not particularly safe if I'm on comms. If I'm playing without comms, then it's okay, but it can get toxic pretty fast, to be honest. And so that's a really hard space to occupy. And in Canada, we have this really great organization called the Entertainment Software Association of Canada. They work directly with publishers to understand data around who gamers are, what are they doing, how are they engaging with games here in Canada and also globally. And so they do sort of different kinds of meta-analyses. And in Canada, 51% of gamers identify as women. And if 51% of gamers, the majority of gamers in Canada identify as women, and they're having the same experience that I'm having, something needs to change. And something that I had seen was that while 51% of gamers collectively in Canada are identifying as women, and like 10% make it to pro, that's a pretty significant gap. And to me, that really signals a systemic barrier to success. And if it's happening to me, it's happening to someone else. And I wanted to see that change. And so that was really the impetus for some of the work that we were doing around creating safe spaces for gaming in schools. And so because that had been our focus, we didn't necessarily have all of the A-listers, the S-tier players that were working with us because they didn't need to. That wasn't what we were doing at the time. We're now starting to have those conversations because of ENC and because of FIFA E. We get to start having those conversations now, but that wasn't something that was pertinent at the time, but it also we didn't necessarily need it earlier on because national sport organizations in Canada, like Hockey Canada, for example, they work with the pipelines of player development up until your World Juniors and then your Olympic national teams, right? And so when you're working in those spaces, you're not actually working with the NHL players. And so what we were trying to accomplish was up to that sort of World Juniors and Olympic level, not actually the NHL, not all of the pro leagues for esports, because that's a different space to occupy. But just like the Olympics did see the inclusion of NHL players this time for the first time in several iterations, we got to see NHL players at the Olympics. We're now seeing that NHL or elite tier now included in nation-based competition because of ENC. So those conversations are now starting to happen and they didn't before. And so that's an exciting step. But yeah, it's something that is coming slowly, but always willing to listen, learn, and grow as a community.
And also in competitive moment for Esports Canada, I know that you guys are preparing to be on FIFA E World Cup, right? It will
Yeah,
take
that's right.
place when?
It'll be this fall. So Nations League starts at end of April. So we're getting ready for Nations League to start soon. And then it goes through a series of qualifications. So there's Nations League and then the Continental Cup and then the World Cup. Yeah.
Full agenda.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the process is similar to the process on ENC for the World Cup, FIFA World Cup, or a bit different?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's very similar in that we have that same process where we have the evaluation criteria predetermined. We have checks and balances. But in this particular case, we had to share our, because all of the different nations are going to be competing through their national football federations. They have to make sure that their selection processes are aligned to the National Football Federation. And it was no different for us. So we had to then develop it, share what we were planning to do with FIFA E for approval before we could continue with the process. But yeah, it's definitely looking at all those checks and balances of technical advisors and a committee, a review committee, independent third parties, and then final ratification by the board of directors. So it's an involved process.
I have a question, but before the question, I was talking to Mariana before, and you were searching a
Yeah.
website. When you talk about FIFA E, Rocket League is part of that?
I know,
This is crazy.
right? Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Because
So
we
we're
look at
actually,
we look at in the
yeah,
website and you said like it's wrong, it's not possible. Then I
I know.
Interesting,
Yes,
very
yes,
interesting.
I know. You'd assume that it's going to be just like the FC or eFootball, but no, it's actually Rocket League. So we are only competing this year in Rocket League. Rocket League is a very significant title in Canada.
in Australia too. I asked because of that. I told you before that I lived in Australia for 1 year, and I lived in
Yeah.
a homestay family, and all of them they play Rocket League, but it's look
Oh,
different. Yeah, it's look different because for me FIFA is like or a football or I don't know FC.
yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? It's a different take on things, but it's a pretty exciting experience. And we have some of the best players in the world that are Canadian. So we're hoping to get them on our team. But we haven't actually done the player selection process yet. We're just finalizing the coach selection. And then once that's done, then they'll be helping to spearhead the player selection process. So,
Nice.
Great.
yeah.
Before we go into the like last questions is about advice and everything, I have one question that because I worked in different companies like I don't know in Tencent, which organize tournaments in companies like Pen Game who plays, and it's really easy to measure how it was the impact or how it was good or bad for this company. How was that in a federation ecosystem? How do you measure the impact of the federation?
I mean, there are different ways that you can measure impact. I think there's always the basics of, are you seeing growth year over year? From a social media standpoint, what are your metrics? What are your engagement numbers? But the very core level for me personally, look at, was there a kid somewhere who was impacted? Was there someone whose life was positively impacted by this? And from back when I first started, um, I'll share a personal example of why I continue to do this. So I had been teaching, and there was this one kid who had a really, really hard life. And this was a low socioeconomic school. This was like all the kids had, they were coming with a lot of stuff every day. Like showing up is hard. And this one student had more than his fair share of challenges in life and was on a plan where his whole goal was to be physically in the building until lunchtime. He was in grade 8. And that was it. Just stay like it wasn't even looking at like, let's work on your grades, let's work on your reading, your math, or anything. Like just stay in the building, be in a safe space where we know that you're safe for half the day. But I found out that this kid played Smash. And so I invited him to join our Smash team. And he started showing up, and we would practice Tuesdays after school. And I discovered very quickly that every Tuesday, he wasn't staying just until lunch. He stayed the whole day because he wanted to be there for Smash after school. So even though he was only required to be there for half a day, and that was a sign of success for this kid, he was now staying till the end of the day because he wanted to be there. And all of a sudden, he started to develop friendships. He started to develop a connection. He started to develop positive associations with a place that may have previously not been a positive experience for him in the past. that's impactful. That's changing someone's life. And I'm not saying that it's a miracle that all of a sudden he becomes like this straight A student and has like scholarships and all that kind of stuff. And it's certainly, I'm not going to say that that happened, but the fact that this kid found belonging, felt seen and valued for something that he brought and was willing to stay all day to be there, that's impact. And I know that for as long as that we are doing this in schools, there are going to be kids that are like that. Now we're starting to shift into that high performance space. And now the goal, the dream in that space, and it doesn't take away or negate what we're doing in those educational spaces, but in those spaces, in the elite spaces, we're looking for that winning moment or that underdog story or that I can't believe we made it this far. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're on this stage representing our country. That's something that we're really excited for and working towards. And so I think the beauty of our ecosystem is that we can have those moments with individual students who this is their lifeline, and we can have those moments of national pride. And both of those work together really, really beautifully.
Yeah, of course. So, Melissa, we are reaching the final part of our episode. I think time flies when we are having fun. So, our audience is most the young people trying to get their space in esports ecosystem. So, for someone starting sports today, what is the biggest mistake you see, and how can they avoid it? I think you see the young person entering now. Will start tomorrow working in esports. What's your the piece of advice?
I would say enter each space with confidence, gratitude, and an open mind. I think that something that we all have to continue working on is our communication. Um, Being able to stand up for what you believe in, but do so in a way that is full of kindness and respect, with the intention of seeking to understand, is really going to be your best friend, because it becomes very heated very quickly in various situations in esports. We tend to have those like really hot moments, and we see it with people in game and out of game. Being able to take a step back, think about the situation, and seek understanding, look for those opportunities for collaborative problem solving, that's going to be your best friend. The people who stick around are the ones that are able to communicate challenging concepts in respectful and constructive ways.
Nice, nice. I have a question. It's not for me, of
Yeah,
course. No, of course, it's for me now.
absolutely. I want to
this,
hear from you.
yeah, the same question I have, but for someone who wants to change the career. For example, I
Mm.
work now in esports in Brazil, and I would like to start in a global environment. Do you have any kind of recommendation? Do you have any kind of advice?
Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Start contacting people, talk to people, um, whenever you can. I know sometimes this is very challenging, but if you can go to events and be in person, that makes a really big difference. Volunteer for things. Be the person who shows up, because that is something that is hard to forget. You know who's there when you're a nobody, and you'll remember them when you are somebody. So definitely don't be afraid to show up, do the work, be in those spaces, take up space, and look for opportunities to collaborate.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Melissa. It's a great honor to have you here with us, so you can say a final statement, your social media profile, a final piece of advice, your time.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with both of you. And on social media, I'm at _Melissa_Burns. And yeah, love to connect with folks, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you a lot. So, se você gostou desse episódio, comenta aqui embaixo, manda para o seu amigo. Se você quer trazer alguém que você gosta muito, quer conhecer um pouco mais da pessoa, também comenta aqui, manda pra gente quem você quer ver aqui no episódio. E não esquece de seguir Esports 101 no Instagram, no LinkedIn e também no Spotify. Fique atento aqui que em breve a gente vai ter novos episódios com novos convidados. Então, muito boa noite, muito obrigada e até a próxima.
Thank you.